All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the HSEP meeting for September. And hope, like I said, everybody had a great summer. I hate to say that because that means it's over, and officially it is over. But I guess we can't complain too much, and let's hope we don't have a too difficult of a winter ahead, and we can still enjoy fall. And the forecast for next week is summer. So what do you what do you know? But things can change, right? So that's fun. So hope everybody's doing well. And I've got some things to cover today to kind of pretty well back to standard agenda items. If I should mention, if you did not attend the last meeting we had, please make sure that you do view the recording, because I did go over some pretty significant changes to the program as far as topics and the topic, especially the control of hazard, the additional of some new topics, the removal of recognition of hazard from the, so I went through a lot of stuff that is important. And if you missed that meeting, next time you do topic selection, you're going to say, where did that come from? Right. And I'm going to say, well, we talked about it. Right. So make sure that you do log into the ACSESS website and view the last meeting where I talked about the changes to the program. And some of you may have experienced them already because you're in the topic selection stage, and that's where you'll be probably impacted the most in the selection, and then the selection on the portal, right? And especially if any of your topics are controlled hazard topics, then there's a lot more clicking to do when you select the controlled hazard topic now, with all the changes and the approaches that you got to pick and all that. So a lot of drop downs that are involved. All right. So today I wanted to go over kind of the typical topic status reminder, share a few key items with regards to that, and then topic reviews. I think today, if I look back to my list, the return to work topics, there's actually 3 of them. And that's next on the list of topics people requested for review. And so we'll look at those, and then the next meeting agenda suggestions. So keep that in mind. If you have any suggestions for future topics or anything you want me to cover on the program related to the program as part of a regular meeting. And then any leftover Q&As, and we'll look at the next meeting date. All right. As usual, if you have any questions, please just unmute and interrupt me. Please don't be shy. I do have the chat open, but I'm not always glancing at the chat list, so I might not catch it right away. So the best thing to do is just unmute. You don't even have to use the hands up feature if you don't want. I think that's not a bad way to get attention, but just unmute. It's not a terribly large, huge group that I can't address questions as they come up. All righty. So let's take a look at the topic cycle status. So probably all of you are at a bunch different places, right? Some of you may be coming close to the end of a cycle and should have some topics already submitted. Some of you may be in the middle of a cycle, probably may have a couple of months left. And some of you are just restarting the cycle. And so somewhere in that range. So everybody's a kind of in different stages. At the end of the day, once you have an expiry date, which is given on the portal, the day I approve your topic selection, you have 365 days. That's from that date is your expiry date. It's your responsibility to track it. Okay. It's your responsibility to get topics done on a kind of flow basis and not submit all your topics at the end of a cycle. So to have all 5 topics, you know, a week before your expiry date is not, it's not good for you or for me. Mentioned that in the past, and usually I like to see, you know, most of the topics all done. If you have one left, the latest I should be seeing that last one would be about 4 weeks prior to expiry date, right? We want to give ourselves time to do a proper review, to address any shortcomings before it goes for validation, so that we have the highest possibility of success that it will be marked complete. So we don't have to have an AER, additional evidence, required on a topic. Even though, you know, I can never guarantee we won't, but, you know, at least if we give ourselves time to do a proper review, we can probably, you know, get it ready to the level that most validators will accept it. Okay, so please make sure you do that. As you're collecting your evidence, as in the past, the best practice to do it is collected by packages. So you're grouping plan evidence together for one upload. You're grouping due evidence, check evidence, and act evidence, if you need act evidence, right? Some of you, I don't know, there's too many that like to just do one package with everything. That gets a little messy. It's confusing, and sometimes when I open up the package, the first thing I see is the check evidence, right? Which is chronologically in the submission, it's probably the last thing to see. You know, and the validator gets all confused. So the best practice is not only to upload the packages. If your packages have multiple pages, like it's going to be like a 15-page PDF file, then it's also good to match the page number to the list of the evidence that's in that package that must be on your evidence story. So in your evidence story, on the evidence column, it's just a list of all the evidence you collected for, say, due. And what is a good way to do it is, in that list, put page 4, page 6, page 8 beside each of the pieces, so that when the validator is opening up the due package and they're looking at your evidence story, they know exactly where everything is, right? If you decide to do one package for everything, then for sure you need to number it, like put the page numbers, because that, you know, that gets very, very confusing. Makes it harder for me to do the review. And if I'm having a hard time looking and finding things, I can imagine the validator is going to have the same issue. So the best way, number your pages on your evidence story for what matching the list of evidence in your upload, right? And it's a good way to do, it's a good thing to do, because you can also make sure that your list in your evidence story matches the uploads. A lot of the times I'll see things listed, maybe you had in your draft version of your evidence story. They show up on the evidence list and I'm looking for them in the upload. They're not there. So I have to send you a note, can't find this, can't find this, can't find this, right? Because if it's on the list, it has to be in the uploads. Validator is going to look for it, right? If you're not going to upload it or you don't have it, then remove it from the list. Hopefully whatever's left is still enough to give you a proper validation, right? So just keep that in mind in best practice. The more you put dates in the narrative column, the activity column of your evidence story, the better. You know, we did this on this date, because it gives a picture to the validator when you're writing the evidence story. And also I see kind of two extremes in the evidence story narrative. I'll see people write 1 or 2 sentences for due, which usually needs a lot more explanation for most topics. And some people will go on like 6, 8 paragraphs, right? The whole life story of the implementation. You don't need too much, but you can't have too little. It just basically, what did you do for each that kind of correlates with each of the pieces of evidence, right? You know, how, when you did the training. And remember, for you know, our industry, it's critical that you address as applicable the due activity for your full-time office branch staff and your temporary placement staff. So when you're writing the narrative for our full-time staff, we did the training, da 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 da. For our temporary placement staff, we incorporate our training into our onboarding, and we have the handbook, and we have this. You need to address both, because the validators validating our topics are familiar with the industry. They know what they're looking for, right? So they're going to see how you addressed the topic, as it applies to both your full-time and your placement staff, right? And some of them lean themselves more to one to the other. And I even say, this topic does not apply to our temporary placement staff, therefore there's no training evidence. So we tell them, okay, we're, legal and other requirements. They're like, that topic, what are you going to, for your placement staff, it doesn't really apply to them. So if you don't have training for them for that topic, they won't be looking for it. Doesn't really apply, but for your internal staff, definitely. All right. So it'll vary depending on what and how the topic applies to both parts of the business, right? Same with the procedures and the policies. I've said in the past, it's always good to split it for internal, external, full-time, office, placement staff, whatever you call them. All right. And please don't send me the evidence packages. Okay. I look at those when you upload them to the portal. When do you do the uploads? When everything is done, ready. Okay. There's no point in, oh, I've got my procedure done and that's part of my plan evidence. I'm going to log in and upload it, just the plan, and then go back again, log in, upload the due. And then there's no point in doing that, because I don't look at it until it's a complete submission. Plan, do, check, act is there, and you mark it ready for review. That's when I look at the evidence. Okay. Do send me the drafts of your evidence story as I request them. That I do look at, and I usually like to see it, right at the beginning. Here's what I'm going to plan on doing, even though you haven't done anything yet, right? Right. And send me the draft so I can review it, make sure you're on the right track, right? If I haven't seen the evidence story until the day you submit it, which could be, a little late in, and there's major issues, it might jeopardize your ability to complete the topic. So it's good, again, to do that draft early on, just of the evidence story. Okay. When you do the submission, also send me an email saying, hey, James, I got the first aid topic there. Can you go have a look at it? It's all done. All right. And then I know that you've got a topic ready for me to review. And if it's good to go, I'll send it for validation. Not good to go, I write my comments right in the evidence story. So please don't send me or upload a PDF version of the evidence story. Upload the Word version, which is the version I send you as the templates, right? I can type right in there the comments right where it applies. I don't see this, I'll write it right beside a piece of evidence you've listed. Don't see it, right? So I'll put my comments right into your evidence story. And it's much easier to do that if I have the Word document than the PDF. Then I got to go and do these comment boxes and all that. Just takes a lot longer, right? So please, evidence stories that come to me in Word. All right. So that's really just kind of an overview, some of the issues and challenges. Remember that in the evidence column of the evidence story, no narrative, just the list, right, of the evidence that supports the narrative, right? And so all the narrative goes on the activity column of the evidence story template. All right. And they like, I've been seeing, a lot of them, they like to read the story, of the flow of what you did. So tell the story, can do it in bullet, can do it in just paragraphs, but it gives them a picture of what you did, how you went about implementing the topic. And the better job you do on that, the clearer it is. It makes more sense to them. And then they can approve it. You may, don't be surprised. A lot of them now, more so than in years past, if they have a question, they're going to call you. So you will get calls from validators. It seems to be more common now than in the past. And they're just clarifying something. Sometimes they can clarify an item that, quickly and then just mark it complete. Sometimes they'll give you the heads up and tell you what is missing verbally. And they'll tell you, right, I'm going to mark it incomplete, but this is what you need to do to fix it. Right. And it's not a big deal. We have 60 days to address the AER, which is additional evidence required. All right. Any questions on the evidence story document, which is the same as the PDCA document, uploading, packaging evidence, when it's required? We're good. I don't see any questions in the chat. I don't hear anybody unmuting. If you were asking a question and you didn't unmute, then I didn't hear you. Happens to me all the time. So, all right. Good. So I expect no issues related to that then. All right. So next is the topic or AER reviews that we typically do at our meetings. And like I said, the return to work topics, there's 3 of them in the program. There is actually a push at WSIB. I guess they were talking internally, and they're pushing to make sure that if people haven't picked these topics yet, that they do so. I think even all the validators at the end of the report, they're reminding people about these topics. So it's kind of timely if you're considering them for future action plans and all that. So we're going to go through and I'd love to hear from folks that have done them maybe recently or last year, even in the program, and how you approach them as we go through the requirements. So I'm going to do a stop share of the slides, and I'm going to share the first thing that you would go to is the topic guide. So even before you select it, I always say, look up what you're signing up for in the topics guide. And the latest version of the topics guide I sent out about a month ago, I believe. It's the July 2023. So make sure you're looking at the latest. Delete all the other ones, which is what I asked you to do in the email. Get rid of all your other topic guides, because this is the latest one. It has all the new topics in it and everything. All right. And you can see here, return to work related topics, WSIB claims management, program requirements, forms and tools, return to work roles and responsibilities, accommodation and return to work plans. Are they interrelated? Yes. Do people write one policy or procedure for all 3? Yes. Do you have to do 3 separate ones? No. Can you do 3 separate ones? Yes. As long as the topic requirements are there for the topic that you're submitting, that's what's going to count. If you choose to do one policy for all 3, you're going to have to highlight the sections for the validator that meet the topic requirements, just to make it easy for them, and they don't have to read every single word, that address the requirements for that particular topic, one of the 3. So let's take a look at the return to work program. This is the overall program requirements, forms, and tools. Okay, so this is all of them will require some sort of a policy procedure document, regardless of which topic it is. And you'll notice that they recommend, and remember, it's always recommend, you don't have to, that you work on the other 2 together. So typically when someone picks one of these, I'll ask them, do you have the other 2 done and ready? Like, have you addressed those? And if they haven't, then I do suggest, because they're so work so well they're so related, to do all 3 topics on one action plan. Okay, but you don't have to, right? And that's what they recommend here. Okay, So this one really focuses on the return to work program or the business approach for disability management. All right. It outlines policies, legal obligations, defines the clear the role and responsibility, which they put it here in the summary. It is a separate topic, so it can get a little confusing as to what they're looking for, right? Clarify program expectations, formalize the return to work process, and promotes consistent administration of the return to work program. All right. And so the focus when you're doing it is going to be on the topic requirements. What do I need to show them I've included in the program? And the list is there. Roles and responsibilities, the contacts that you do, collaboration for return to work. How does that work? And who collaborates with who? With in your case, do you collaborate even with the client site, with your internal office staff, with the safety person, all of that, right? The forms that are going to be required, when they're issued, who does them, the who, what, when, where, how for the documentation, that'll be included. When and if and how you do independent medicals, the IMEs, and when and if and how you do FAEs, right? The who, what, when, and where for those included. Do you do physical demands analysis? And if you need to, when do you do it? Who does them? Should be in the policy. Privacy, how do you protect your documents? So that should be right in your policy. Who secures them? Where are they kept? Locked? All that kind of stuff. Okay. And the standards, the privacy, it's how you share information, and then the record keeping. So it's privacy relating to personal information, right? And then privacy more in the secure retention and record keeping. So two aspects of it. And all of these should be addressed within your document. That kind of, it almost lays out the table of contents for you, right? The next piece that they say is it should include the following standardized forms. So Appendix A, B, C, D, E, F, G are here. This is part of your program document, right? The FAF is a WSIB form. You just reference that you do. Return to work plan, that's something you put together. Contact log, you put together. Progress reports, very similar to contact log, depending on how you put it together. Demands analysis, the WSIB does have their demand analysis forms if you choose to use them, especially if you're trying to match return to work. A standard letter for the healthcare practitioner letting them know so-and-so is hurt. We have modified work program. Can you, please, send us the FAF, that kind of thing. And then typically a standard modified work offer. It comes in many forms. Okay. That should be included. Medical consent for release of information. You should have that form, because if you are going to do an IME or an FAE, and you're going to send the doctor or the clinic some information related to the current medical status, you need consent. And so the worker will sign that. All right. And then the return to work plan closure and evaluation feedback is basically how how did the modified work placement go when you close the plan, and do you have to have every single one of these? I've had submissions not have every single one and still get a complete. You might get an AER. I don't know how stickler they are, because it does say includes the use of at minimum, right? And yeah, they're all important forms, but not everybody uses everything. So if you have them all, then bonus, that's great. And that's what you should submit. Okay. So you could be risking a potential AER if you don't. Okay. And then the procedures, internal processing, the conflict resolution is important. So how do you address issues internally? And then external is the dealing with return to work specialists, who, what, when, where, how of appeals, and that kind of thing. So dealing externally with the board component. So there's your procedure should address that. Okay. And then the evaluation, which would be your check. Okay. So how do you evaluate, or how do you do any checks on a case by case or claim by claim basis for return to work, duration of plan, return to work program costs? So this is kind of looking at the program and how it's performing. And then the who, what, when, even survey, some people do satisfaction surveys after a claim is closed. They'll send a survey sheet to the worker. How did you find that it went? Okay. Okay. And then the responsibilities assigned for communication, performance, results. So this is the results of the evaluation. How are they shared internally? And then do you do a CIP, continuous improvement plan? So this would be, from a submission point of view, this would be good check activity. All right. I think that's all for that one. Any questions? And so here is the overlap, right? And why it's good to do them together, because when you're doing the return to work roles and responsibilities, they're going to focus on, did you assign within your program, okay, clear responsibilities for these? And it says where applicable. Okay, so you might have different people doing different components. So your list might be a little bit different, but they're looking at the roles and responsibilities clearly assigned as to what is my role within the program. Okay. And then the training component. Okay. To the different people responsible. Okay. So your training should include that. And again, it's going to be a little bit a different training for your workers versus your office staff and the hierarchy within the organization. How does a dedicated role and responsibility return topic differ from the program? So you'll see in a minute. It's a good question, because you'll see in a minute that the one I just went through is the overall program, and here it's just focusing on roles and responsibilities. So let me finish the go through, and then we can together look at where the differences are. All right. So the training, okay, and then review the program roles and responsibilities with workers annually. That should be included in your procedure. Ensure return to work program information is accessible. How do you do that? And keep the records. So you see there's no mention of the forms, nothing, right? It's strictly, now when you say different, if you incorporate this in your overall claims management program, that's fine. But when you're submitting this topic, this is all they're going to look for, is in your program, do you have clearly assigned roles and responsibilities? Did you train everybody? And do you have a review process, refresher? Do you have, is the information accessible? How do you share it with all the different people that are have responsibilities? And do you have training records? That's it. And it's focused around roles and responsibilities. It doesn't talk about return to work plans, forms, or anything. So it's a piece of the overall program, but it's focusing on making sure that you have the right roles and responsibilities. Whereas the third topic solely focuses about related to the aspects of accommodation and return to work within your program. So it may have been written out in the first topic, but here they want to see, they're just going to look for exactly what you do for return to work, and especially looking at what you incorporated related to accommodation and return to work, right? So your policy or procedure should talk about each one of these. Pre-injury job, accommodation, suitable job, okay. And it talk about how do you go about offering transitional temporary alternative work. Do you use, how you use graduated return to work, right? Do you have provisions for assisted devices? So all that should be in and addressed in your program, all right? And then they're going to focus obviously on the return to work plans. Okay. You know, the whole return to work plan process. And does your program clearly assign the return to work roles and responsibilities? How you process and use the FAF, right? How you, if you require and use job task analysis, job demands. Okay. And
James, would a good way to look at this be like the first one, the return to work program requirements, is basically what are the documents that you're going to need to put this plan in place? And then number 2 is who's going to be responsible for everything. And then number 3 is how have you utilized 1 and 2 to put your whole plan into action?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to summarize it. But when you're submitting the topic, you can see that the lens is put on each one of those standalone, right? And that's what they're going to focus on, right? Because, you know, I have had people submit just say this one without having the other 2. So as long as you meet these topic requirements, is it a recommended prerequisite? Yes. Is it mandatory? No. So you can submit just accommodation return to work, as long as the document you submit has all of this. Even though, yes, you're right, it's not a full claims management program, but it meets the topic requirements, it'll pass, right? And that's why they kind of give you that flexibility to do them separately. All right. But you're 100% correct. They do seem to flow, you know, kind of, you know, in order. But where I kind of see a lot of the overlap is the actual written document is going to, like, the first topic almost requires that you address the other 2 in your document because it talks about return to work and accommodation. But the detail of what should be there is in the other 2 topics. And that's why it makes sense to do them all 3 together, right? Unless you just have a gap in one of them because you're using a significant gap as the topic selection, then that's good. If your program is totally deficient in one of them, then it may be new, right? But you're going to submit one document that covers all 3 topics, but they're only going to look for the topic that you're submitting, right? So you don't need to worry that if you're only doing one topic, but your program covers all the other topics, doesn't matter. They'll look at it and but they want to see the topic requirements specific to that topic addressed, because that's what that topic is all about. And when it comes to the evidence, it's going to be specific too. So when we go to the other document you would always review when you select a topic is the sample evidence stories, all right? Because that'll give you a much, hopefully, better idea, even though I'm pretty sure when we look at the samples, there's probably going to be some repetition there as well, of what the submission for each topic would look like. All right. So typically in plan, it's the document. So we didn't have an existing return to work. So these are samples. Remember, you can go about and, you know, customize yours. But in this case, they didn't have a whole return to work program document, obviously, and it looks like they created one and they were experiencing claims. So this is some of the examples of the narrative, how they created the templates. They worked with their safety committee, that kind of, just kind of ideas, right? And then the do. So you can see big on training for all the different levels within the organization. So here, all employees were trained, committee, right? Where the forms are available was included. When our employees begin return to work, they're asked to complete the forms, the functional abilities form, and when it's filled out, how it's processed internally. So just some examples of the do for the program from a program perspective. And then you did, the check was and random interviews of different workers that have responsibilities. A meeting, a meeting with the Joint Health and Safety Committee to review how the program's going. That would be a check. Mini audit. And then always in the check, you, if you have any gaps, you would list them because you're going to address them in ACT. So any gaps here should be addressed in ACT. No gaps in check, then NA for ACT. So that's kind of the flavor for that one, because then, and then here are some the evidence that they're going to look for: the policy and related forms, training records, video, whatever, or interview as an example, samples of forms. So that's an important point. If you're going to submit samples of form for due, because the blanks are plan evidence, they need to be completed versions. Don't put blank forms into the due evidence packages, because it doesn't help, right? Now, if you don't have completed forms, we have, you could just write in the narrative, we haven't had a claim to test out, how people are completing the forms. We can't fabricate a claim, so you're not going to have the forms if you don't have a claim. That's good. That's good news, right? And then the check was the meeting to review the topic. This was the minutes of a meeting. So if they reviewed it with the committee, then the minutes of the meeting would be the evidence for check. All right. The roles and responsibilities. So what does that look like in standalone? And here, in this case, this example is they said it had gaps. A lot of, I guess, people weren't aware of the roles, so you created it as a standalone. We assigned them to everybody, and that's the document. Okay. Do, we provided a letter with a sample of our return to work program, included shared responsibilities in each paycheck. Okay, that's one way to communicated it, I guess. And then the posted on the boards. They were made, the return to work roles that were made available in the first aid room, and then they did some training for leadership, supervisors. And then they actually had a claim where they could try out and see if everything was followed. Did people get contacted? Was the FAF processed? Did they then move from that to return to work offer and monitoring the claim, that kind of thing. So if you had an experience with a claim, you can say, this is how it went after we did the training. If you didn't have a claim, you didn't have a claim. What are you going to do, right? And then the check. And remember, checks always at least 2 months, 8 weeks after the completion of due, never before, because then it'll come back, it'll get kicked back. You did it too early. So here they evaluated return to work. They'd look at reports that were filled in. were people using the forms? And again, doing a little audit checklist or is a good way to do the check on this one, to make sure. And again, if you don't have claims and you can't test the full thing out, then you just write that. We weren't able to see if people are filling in their forms properly because we haven't had a claim. We don't know if people are phoning as required. We haven't had a claim. So that can happen, right? And then the act, again, it's always as an outcome of the check. So you can see where the focus is here is, did you have the policy? Did you include return to work? And did you train people on their, right? And in your case, when we say people, it covers temporary workplace staff and your internal staff, right? Right. So the policy, plan evidence. They created some sort of a matrix that could be used as a training tool. That could be plan or do evidence. Completed return to work forms if you have, do evidence. Orientation training, do evidence. Worker testimonial video, do evidence. So I don't see which one. Testimonial video, if you're getting feedback, could be the check evidence, depending on whether you're interviewing a worker to see if they understood the training, then it's due. But if you're interviewing a worker that went through the process, testimonial, how it worked, then that's check. And it doesn't have to be a video. It could be just a transcript of a conversation, a survey, 4 questions, sample survey of people who went through the claims process. That could be good check. So the sample for the second topic, accommodation and return to work. So plan evidence. Okay. So some general, they wanted a program supports, make sure return to work's done properly, follows all the laws, which is a nice thing to put in there. They drafted the accommodation policy, so they created it. They even got help from an ergonomist, created sample templates and letters. So that's all the plan, all the paperwork related to return to work only. Then again, shared with in a meeting, staff meeting. So that would be their training. So again, employees and management training specifically on the return to work process only. They did a PowerPoint, which you could upload as evidence, the attendance sheets, which will be due evidence. Okay. And then here they evaluate, they tested it, they did a mock scenario. Okay, that's good, one way, especially if you don't have any real claims, you can do kind of a mock scenario. And then if you actually had any issuing of a return to work offer plan, that'll be audit, that'll be the completed version will be your due, but then reviewing it, auditing it with your committee, was it used properly, was it completed properly, would be the check. And here they said, we noted all employees and supervisors were using the correct forms with the exception of one case, right? So it was a form not filled in when you did the review. That'll be a gap. And you can still use an audit checklist for check, right? Yes, no. And then the act, again, corresponding to the check results. Sending out memos, additional training, right? And so here, evidence is the document again. Return to work packages. Okay, this is samples that if you've created that, and those would have been created in the first topic, the program topic. So here you can submit them as plan evidence again, even if you did it already in the first topic. So the blanks of everything, samples, plan evidence. Completed versions, due evidence. Training, due evidence. Copy of return to work evaluation audit, check evidence. Video testimonial from an accommodated employee, check evidence. different ways to do check. Right. And that's it. Those are the 3 topics, 3 samples of what PDCA would look like. Anybody currently doing any of these? Anybody on the call currently doing any of these? Did them last year? Any one of them? Doesn't have to be all 3. Or the year before? I know a lot of you have had them in your programs, but what I'm looking for is your experience and submission for the excellence program. Oh, so Carolyn's, she's working on them now currently. Yeah.
Hey, James, it's Effie here.
Yeah.
I did the accommodation one last year.
Okay. And how did it go? Was it marked complete?
Yeah, it didn't need an AER. We passed right away actually. So
okay. And did you submit a standalone or was it all part of your overall claims? How did you?
it was part of our overall claims. We created a kind of a new training for our customer support associates that handle the claims.
Okay.
And created a new created the policy with an electronic return to work template that they would have to follow.
Okay, excellent.
And then so it worked well.
Which topic were you submitting for?
The accommodation one, the last one.
Yeah.
Because we had the other 2 is just the accommodation
So
piece.
you added a little bit more robust component to your program to address the topic requirements.
Correct.
And then retrained everybody and re-implemented. And now, did you have any claims that you were able to use for due evidence?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what did you send in?
We sent in the I printed out the completed electronic copies.
Okay.
And then so we had subsequent follow-ups that were required for each of the.
Did we send in a return to work plan, a modified work offer?
Just the return to work plans, actually, not the modified work offer.
Okay.
So just the plans,
right.
and then the follow-up, the follow-up, I guess, completed documents for each, because we did it on a weekly basis, or we do it on a weekly basis.
Yeah,
we
that's
just
the ongoing communication.
Yeah.
What did you do for check?
I just did a check of, I'm pretty sure it was just of the policy.
Okay, did you use the checklist, the yes, no, yes, no? Okay.
Yeah.
Like a little audit checklist. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that checklist does more than the policy. It checks your, do you have the right things in your policy? Did you train people? So it kind of
exactly
makes you go through. Did you execute the full plan do check act, right?
Yeah.
And you're auditing that. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Excellent. So that one worked out okay.
Yeah, it worked out well.
Anybody else do any of the 3? I know Carolyn said you did, but nobody else this year, last year, year before? Putting finishing touches. Okay. Are you able to unmute and share what you're doing? Or your mic's not working, or? Okay, that's fine. All right. Anybody else? All right. So hopefully if you have seen any deficiencies in any of the 3 topics we went through today that are significant enough to select the topic as a significant gap, that's a good thing to keep in mind. Make a note. If you have everything for all three and you've got it fully in place, it'll be hard to obviously justify anything for topic selection. But if you do have significant gaps, because you're looking at this now at the topic requirement says, oh, we don't have this, we don't have this. If there's a lot, then it could justify significant gap, and don't hesitate to pick it as a topic, significant gap. Okay, so keep that in mind for future topic selection. All right, any questions on the approach? Okay. I don't have any AERs that were significant enough to share. Most of the recent, any sort of recent AER, I think were just basically the topic requirements were not all included in your policy. So they'll look at that. I think that's not an uncommon AER we get, because I go through it, but again, if I don't read like every single point and match it, I look for the general requirements, and if they're typically there, then, you know, but validators will go sentence by sentence and match every requirement to everything in the policy, and sometimes they'll write an AER if it's a fairly significant thing that was missed. There's a question we are using as check evidence. How many claims? How many? Okay, so check evidence. If you're just collecting stats for check evidence, that's not check evidence. Check evidence is auditing that people are doing everything you're requiring them to do, interviewing people to make sure they understand, interviewing workers that were went through the process and get their feedback, completing a topic checklist, like a little mini audit. That's a check. Okay, so be careful that you're actually doing a check, not just collecting data, right? The timeline for validations, I see about it depends on the time of year and how many they're getting inundated in the overall program, but typically I'm seeing about a 2-week turnaround. And if they're really, really busy, it could be 3-week turnaround on a topic submission. So you should get a response back. Okay. Yeah, you're using the checklist, that's fine. Make sure in the checklist, it's not just yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, with no type in the far right-hand column, even if it says, you only have to put comments if no, also put comments if yes. Was the policy created? Yeah, done, training completed, You don't have to rewrite the evidence story, but just put a 3 or 4 sentence thing to to support why it's a yes. Okay. You don't have to write the whole story. Just, employees trained, people trained, meeting took place. Sometimes you can even put see evidence package, beside the yes, right? Because it's there, right? So just they like to see a little bit more than someone just taking a piece of paper and going, yeah, and then submitting that. Right. All right. I think we got that feedback from validator on not it wasn't marked incomplete. They just opportunity for improvement to elaborate more on how the check was done, other than just fill in the checklist only. All right. Any other questions as we move to agenda items for next meeting? Any topics you want me to go over, you can let me know now. Just unmute, yell them out. I'll write them down. Send me an email, topic suggestion ideas. I am going to try to get a validator to come in and talk to us. It's been a while. I think we did that year before last. I can't remember when, but because of now experiencing the program more, probably be good again to have a validator come and kind of go over the process they go through in validation, to hear it from the kind of the horse's mouth sort of thing. So I will try to see if I can get a validator to come and talk to us as part of the next agenda. In the meantime, again, topic reviews, please. If I don't get any, I'll just kind of randomly pick some of the popular topics. But let me know what you want to see at these meetings. And because I don't, there's not always updates. Like I don't anticipate WSIB program updates after the latest major one coming. We'll look at, topics and process issues, right? Any questions? I'm looking at my calendar for next meeting, probably be November, the end of November sometime. And that'll probably be our last meeting for 2023. Let me take a look at my November calendar. And let me see, I'm looking at the 29th. I don't know if I don't think there's anything going on that anybody knows about major. We'll book it for the 29th, 1 p.m. And we'll send out the invites. All right. If there are no questions, I'll thank you very much for attending. Thank you for your participation. And if I'm sure I'll be bumping into most of you through email or meetings in between now and November. Please keep track of your expiry date. Make sure you're working on your topics. If you have any questions and that, let me know. If you're planning on deferring any topics, you have to go through me. You can't just log in and defer now. You have to send me an email. Once I get confirmation, I go in the portal and defer a topic for you. Okay. So if you're going to be doing that, let me know once you've made the decision. So, we know when your action plan will close, when your actual topics have closed. All right. All right, folks, take care and have a great weekend. Enjoy the summer weather you like before it gets into full fall, or we may just go straight into winter. Who knows? All right. Take care.